folks. How are you doing? Excellent. It's always good to hear when you're doing really good. It's good to hear. So, in continuing on with our off grid life vlog that I started up about a video ago or so. So, I'm going to go over a few subjects sort of thing. There, I got my microphone on. I barely ever use it because it doesn't seem to work very well. They're kind of shoddy. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they mess the sound up and then you kind of wreck your video. So I don't know. I'll give it another shot and see. Hopefully it doesn't mess things up here today. So like I was saying, these videos are I'm just trying to share some experience. We've been off grid for a little over 5 years, about 5.5 years now or so. So, I'm just trying to share some experiences, some perspectives, what we've learned around here, in our off grid setup and, our environment and, maybe stuff relates to where you are, maybe not, right? So, but there's always something to relate. So, like I'm saying, these videos are pretty much geared more, they're geared more towards maybe individuals that are maybe looking at going off grid or kind of dreaming of, the idea of living off grid, or maybe like new people newly living off grid, just going through figuring the stuff out, which is, basically what we did, right? Kind of went in blind, and well, pretty much everyone kind of does. You just kind of make the leap and you go for it. So, but you definitely watch videos and learn as much as you can. I know that's what we've been doing the whole time we've been out here. I don't know how many hours of research and learning we've done since we've been out here. Like, it's been a huge learning experience, learning curve, all that, right? But fun. It's been a challenge, absolutely. But life is supposed to be a challenge, right? It's not supposed to be easy. That's my view anyway. Like, if life is easy, then something's not right. Like, you look at any other species, any other living thing, alive in this planet or this universe, whatever, like, it's not living easy, right? Every day is a struggle to survive. So for the humans, we've kind of got away from that a lot. In the last, whatever, 100 years, or progressively as time goes on, humans have got more and more away from, living that life of difficulty or struggle or whatever, right? Everything that we come up with nowadays is to make everything easier and the least amount of effort and conveniences and this and that, right? So that's where we've been headed for a long time, obviously with the the mental structure of humans, ingenuity, thinking of ways to make things easier. It's not like other species don't do that. They do, for sure. Every species tries to figure out ways to get more efficient, right? Whether it's, a wolf pack hunting out in the woods, right? They'll come up with structures and game plans of, how they configure the members of their, pack, certain ones in the front and in the back and in the middle. It's all organized, right, to be efficient and effective. So just to use as an example, right? So every species does it. Just humans do it on a way bigger scale, right? So now look at us. We're talking to computer screens and this and that, right? So getting computers to do all of our work for us. So anyway, kind of getting off topic here, but so yeah, these videos are sort of geared, like I said, geared toward individuals that are maybe thinking of going off grid or maybe newly off grid. Solar applications. So obviously off grid living, especially nowadays, with all the gadgets we have and this and that, technology, computers, phones, all that, people still want to, for the most part, be able to use that stuff or incorporate it into their lives, even, living off grid. So in comes your energy needs or wants. Let's more say they're more wants than really needs, but some of them anyway. Obviously, like heat as energy is important for survival. But so solar energy obviously comes to mind when people think of off grid. It's probably, one of the number one applications people think of when they're thinking of off grid, right? So, okay, so when it comes to solar, kind of a starting point for someone new, obviously, like I didn't know anything about solar before we moved out here. And I can't tell you how many hours of time I spent, reading through materials, watching videos, and then hands-on experimenting with solar, the various components of it and that. So you learn it as you go. But say to paint a picture for someone that's, hasn't been there yet. So I'll try to paint a picture of kind of where you would start even before you've maybe even acquired a property and you haven't built anything yet, just to give you an idea. So you have some sort of image in your head or some sort of basis to, start building in your head how much, all the steps you got to go through, stuff to consider. So energy needs. So this video, we're just going to focus on solar. So let's say solar. So first thing you want to look at, where you live. What's your climate like there? What are your sunlight hours like? And throughout the year, say you want to look at how much sunlight hours like during the summer, and then say winter, how many hours do you have in the winter? Obviously, usually, depending on whatever part of the hemisphere or whatever you are, kind of thing, like we're northern here. So for our situation, obviously winter, the sun is very limited. There is like a chart too that has a breakdown of sunlight hours. You can look online, you'll find it on there, and you look at your region and it'll show you, it tells you gives you a basic outline of how many sunlight hours you can expect throughout the year in your region. So let's say our region here, which is like Northern Ontario, Canada, let's say summer, we're about, on that chart, I think we're like not even at 7, maybe like 6.5 off the top of my head, if I can remember correctly. And then winter, I believe we're under 2. So that's not very much sunlight hours. So if you look at your sunlight hours, that'll paint a picture. You want to have that picture of how much sunlight, because obviously you need sunlight for solar applications. So you want to figure that out and get an idea. So next, once you have that, you know, okay, this is our zone. This is how many sun hours we can expect, you know, at certain times of the year. Next, you want to look at your appliances and electronics, like what appliances are you wanting to use, you know, what in your off-grid life, which ones would you like to use? So just write them down on a sheet. You have all those down there. And then for each item, you want to figure out the energy consumption of that item. Sometimes, like, every unit will have its energy use on it. You know, some are labeled on different than others. Some will have it in wattage. Some will have it just in voltage and amperage. So you'll need to convert that to figure out, you know, wattage, how many watts is that appliance going to use, you know, in an hour of use or a day, however long you're looking to run it, sort of thing. So you want to itemize each thing, find out how much energy that requires to use. And then from there, you know, you can ballpark your energy use. Yeah, so you've got your list of appliances, you've got the energy use of them figured out and written beside it, and that'll give you a total. So say all your items totaled up, you total up to whatever, let's just use 5,000 watts. And you want to run that stuff on a daily basis, and you need 5,000 watts per day. So now you know that's your starting point for that. So, and when you're building a solar system, generally you start, if you're using batteries, which if you plan on running stuff, like, you can run appliances, you know, powered just by panels and not have a battery bank. You can, for sure. But once the sun is gone, it's not going to work anymore. So if you want to use those appliances, you know, once the sun is down, on a cloudy day, you need to have a battery bank. So the battery bank is the starting point of the solar setup. And that's why you need to know what you want to run, and you need to have an idea of the power to use, because you need to build your battery bank. And you're going to build the battery bank based on that energy requirement to run your list of stuff that you want to run. So once you have that stuff and you're looking at, okay, battery bank. So you've got your requirements. Now you got to think, do you want to run those items, you know, be able to run them through the night, be able to run them on a cloudy day? Then you're going to need a battery bank that is going to be bigger than your energy requirement. Ideally, you want to have it bigger. And especially, you're going to need it bigger because there's a lot of terms, you know, you learn them as you go along. There's a term called days of autonomy. And basically what that means is factoring in more battery reserve power for days like this, right? You look at this day here. So if you have days like this, particularly, let's say, winter, you need to factor this in, or you want to factor it in. So obviously there's other components too that can help you out. Like, if you can't build enough of a big enough battery bank, or, you know, a solar array large enough to be able to charge it up quick, You can work in a generator. That's what we do here because our solar setup is very small. So days of autonomy. So you need to plan for stuff like this. So say, you know, you have in winter, you could go like for a week of weather like this. You're going to need to factor that into the battery bank. And you either need a battery bank that's going to be large enough to be able to provide power for your appliances through that week without getting any charge from the solar panels, or you're going to need an alternative measure to charge up your battery bank, which, like what we use here, we have a gas generator and we have a battery charger worked in to our components of our solar setup. So that helps charge up our batteries on days like this when the solar panel isn't going to provide any charge to those batteries. So you got to figure that out. So once you figure out, your battery bank size, your light requirements, you're going to look at your solar panels and you want to ask yourself, okay, based on your sunlight hours, that you already found out, you want to look at, ideally, it's not like you have to, but ideally, when you're building a solar system, you want to build it off of your sort of shortest sunlight hour days of the year and built in with your days of autonomy. So like I was saying before, basically your system is going to be a lot bigger and capable of going through periods of weather like this. If you live in a sunny, say you live in like the desert or somewhere, gets a lot of sunshine and very few cloudy days and whatever, like you're in the desert somewhere, whatever, Nevada or New Mexico, something like that, you can get away with a very, depends, but you can get away with a lot smaller battery bank than what, say, I would get away with here to run your stuff, right? So, like, say, living in a climate like this, low sun hours, cloudy weather, long, drawn out winters. If you're going to rely on solar, you need a substantial solar system to be able to produce enough power to run, say, if you're looking like at a household of stuff. Otherwise, you got to use a generator. Another thing you want to figure out is there's different voltage setups. So we've only ever just run a 12 volt system here, which is the basic standard system. It's easy to set up. It's low voltage, so it's safe. You're not going to get electrocuted and this and that, right? Like it's a very easy voltage to work with. So it's got pros and cons though. Yeah, it's easy to work with, and the components can be kind of easier to source, locally in that, but it's expensive. So there's a few different voltage systems you can run. So there's 12 volt, which is the most basic, 24 volt, and then 48 volt. So you got to figure out which one of those you want to use. And they're all going to have their own way they need to be set up to meet the demands of, how the battery's got to be charged, how the panel's got to be set up, what wiring you need to use. Ideally, that's kind of the route you want to go, at least 24 or 48 volt. You can get away with a lot smaller wire because the voltage is higher, so it transfers easier. When you're using the 12 volt systems, you got to use thicker wires, and wire's not cheap. So there's a lot of different factors to consider. Just to get an idea of what you're getting into helps for sure. It takes a lot. Like when I first started out, I researched solar for probably a good, and still do to this day. Not as much lately because I don't have the money to build the system that I want right now. So it's on the back burner. But initially, when we moved out here and I had to figure out our system here, I spent a good year and a half, 2 years just watching so many YouTube videos and, reading different articles and books. Because ultimately, if you're going to set the stuff up yourself and maintain it, you need to know what you're doing. There's a lot of stuff you need to know about, and you learn it as you go. The more and more you go through it, and you figure it out. But it takes time because it's a different thing. Like I was saying earlier, like I had no exposure to solar alternative energy before we moved out here. So anyway, just things to consider there. So I think that kind of just gives you a sort of a starting point in what you want to kind of think about. So again, like I said, you want to know your sunlight hours, and especially in winter, all year round, you want to know what you can depend on through the year for sunlight hours to get charged through the panels and charge a battery bank. You want to know that. You want to know what voltage system you want to run. If it's something just simple, you want to do lights and like a real simple thing, 12 volt is fine. If you are looking to run a bunch of different appliances and, like a well pump and like a deep freeze and some bigger stuff, you want to be running at least a 24 volt, but probably preferably 48 volt. 48 volt usually is recommended if you're looking to run like sort of a household, like a common household. You got washer, dryer, all the amenities of, say, an on-grid house, in town. 48 volt system for sure. 24 volt, smaller size house, cabin, maybe to mid-size. Running some appliances, a fridge, computer stuff and the TV and this and that. 24 volt will probably serve your needs just fine. And then 12 volt, like I said, the basic, which is ours, and we do run a fridge off it, so you can. And you can run other stuff too, depending on the size of your battery bank and that. You still can run that stuff on 12 volt, but it's, like I said, it's more costly to go 12 volt. But if it's just a simple setup, 12 volts probably how you're going to go. Some lighting, maybe a small fridge, and you're good. So yeah, again, know your sun hours year round. Obviously be familiar with your climate. If you got a plan for gloomy, crappy weather, you want to know that. You want to know the voltage of system that you want to run. Anyway, folks, just trying to make a simple sort of intro video there. Just food for thought. Like I was saying, someone that's probably not off grid yet, thinking about it, one day maybe, just trying to get a sense of, things that, you might be getting into in that. That's hopefully what I'm trying to make this video for. So ideally, like I said in the last video here, like ideally, if you are living off grid or want to move off grid, and you plan on running stuff and you have the means, like I absolutely recommend get your solar figured out, right? Do your research. Have fun with it. It's fun to learn about. Like it's another world, right? And there's so many different components in that, and like you can build your setup to your own. So it's a total like a individuality thing. Like there's so many different components, different companies. Like it's saying, like there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of ways you can go about it. So have fun with it. Do your research. Learn about your energy conversions. Figuring out how much energy appliances use. All that. Just kind of learn the basics, and then you just keep building from there, right? But like I was saying, like if you are looking to live off grid and you want to be able to, run various appliances and that, like you want to be powering from solar. So whether it's like running power off straight up off panels or running power out of a battery bank, that's ideally, it's more of an upfront investment. It absolutely is, for sure, right? As opposed to say like, going and buy a generator for, a couple grand. It could be just to get some solar set up is going to be a lot more than that, especially if you got to have a battery bank. Batteries are not cheap. They've come down a lot, don't get me wrong, and there's various different types, and some of them are cheaper, right? Especially if you did like just the classic flooded lead acid batteries, like they're pretty cheap, and that's what we use. We still use those, and we have no problems with them. But you don't want to rely on like fossil fuel for your power. Any sort of gas power, like it's not the way to do it, especially in the long run. Like you're going to be spending so much money on that, and you're just burning money. Whereas if you invest into a decent solar setup, like there's no reason that setup can't last you 20, 30 years or more, right? So, with proper maintenance, like you set up a decent solar setup, you're styling for decades. Like you're good. And you do your maintenance, and like I do barely anything here. Our batteries, like I said, they're flooded lead acids. The only maintenance I do on our system, literally, like I'll top up the water in the batteries every couple months. That's it. So it's basically just hands-free, takes care of itself kind of thing. I just need to watch because our solar array is puny, and on days like this, our battery bank's getting no charge. So I've got a battery monitor on there, and it tells me when the batteries are getting down to 50%. We don't let them go below 50% for lead acids, flooded lead acids. So that's another thing you learn about battery requirements. What they require for maintenance and that. They're all kind of different, right? So anyway, yeah, you want to be running free, basically free energy. And the closest way you're going to get to that is by using solar and investing in a battery bank that's going to last you like so long that in the long run, basically those batteries, costed you nothing, right? Whereas if you were to run a generator over all those years, and how much you'd have to spend on gas and fuel and this and that to run that, just burning it. So anyway, folks, kind of rambled quite a bit here, but so I hope that gives you some sort of starting point or something to think about in terms of, looking at an off-grid life, and just kind of a general idea of an intro to solar. Like I was saying, that's the route you want to go. You don't want to be burning gas. So, all right, folks. Well, hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the next one. Till next time.